unmuted. Okay.
Perfect. Dan, I got to tell you, thank you so much for being flexible and being on. Your expertise is amazing, specifically as it turns to as it relates to first responders. So I have two questions, and these are from people in the audience. There are clear use cases for our platform for customized B2B applications. How does your system stay relevant with the rise of consumer AR glasses like Apple glasses? How does your solution scale, or does every client require a customized solution? So why don't we talk about the difference between between enterprise and consumer. We're an enterprise brand, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions that enterprise and consumer are interchangeable. Let's talk about that, and then let's talk about the custom solutions that we can do. Maybe if we can talk about some of the custom solutions that we're working on as a team would be great, but anything that you can add to that to answer that question. This was from an anonymous user.
Okay, sure. So from the perspective of enterprise versus consumer AR, consumer AR is really an area that we've specifically avoided going into. I think we focused on the enterprise, which it really provides us with more of a direction as far as gathering these requirements and specific use cases that are already available. We're more focused on things that can provide utility. So we're not necessarily interested in some of the entertainment aspects, the video gaming aspects, all those kinds of things. So you'll see based on the applications that we've been working on, that's where they're focused. One of the things that we're trying to focus on there is server-based and basically extensible solutions that are usable by multiple businesses. And we try to genericize as much as this is possible. Things like our remote assistance on our workspace application are designed that basically anybody can take these and can see results and see utility right out of the box. Just being able to have that see what I see remote assistance type of call plus video conferencing, being able to annotate what the user is seeing and able to provide directions and things like that. As far as custom development goes, that will depend on various departments when we're talking about EMS and fire, and that just goes down to the reality of the situation is it seems to be very regional. There's dozens of RMS and EMS platforms out there that are being used by various departments. We've had, I think, 2 systems that are being used by multiple departments so far, but we've also had a number of other systems that are being used by different departments. There's already a lot of investment been made into using those platforms. So the reality is we will have to do a level of customization to provide integration with that data from the health system.
One of the things, not to interrupt you, but one of the things I think is important to talk about is that, and I've been involved in the industry. I've worked with a few companies. We were hardware companies. We weren't software companies. And what's unique about ThirdEye is that we are a hardware company and we're a software company. And so what that means is that somebody can actually take our glasses out of the box and theoretically go to work. One of the companies that I worked with, one of the complaints we had is they said, you can do remote mentor, but I need a subscription. You didn't tell me I needed a subscription. And when we thought about that, it made sense. You can do it, but you have to go to a third-party app. You can do everything with ThirdEye. Is that, by being able to provide that, does that help us helping first responders and other industries?
I think it puts us in a unique position, and especially being a smaller company, we're willing to do much more customized work at a much lower volume necessarily than a company like Microsoft or a company like Apple. Typically, if you're not working with thousands of users, they're not really interested in doing customized work for you. It's going to be basically thrown in your lap to take care of that kind of stuff. So that's really one of the places I think where we can excel by being very responsive and providing these custom solutions for individual departments. And one of the things that we are working with though right now is figuring out how we can make these solutions extendable and portable across multiple departments. For example, I spoke a little bit about the EMS protocol that we're working on, an application that's fully interactive and hands-free, allowing you to walk through these protocols while wearing the glasses, showing you the relevant information at the right time. the idea with that is we've made it in such a way where we can extend that to the protocols for any of the 50 states fairly quickly and have a customized solution without having to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And that's really the idea, is how can we just plug into the existing data that you have and use our glasses to be the way to really present it.
One of the things that I was blown away, I want to talk a little bit about our Hipaa compliance and our patient records. Can we discuss that a little bit?
Sure, I will do my best.
Sure. We're going to do a brief overview. One of the things that I found very unique about our organization is when the team did a demonstration accessing patient records and being able to not only access them in real time, but update them in real time. And when I was talking to the chief yesterday during our dry run, he was like, oh my God, that's a game changer. The fact that we're HIPAA compliant, the fact that we can do this. Can you talk a little bit about why that is kind of in what I would consider almost breakthrough? Why that for a headset? Why that outreach? Why a team would want that?
So exactly, and it comes back to that theme of hands-free, really, and then that's the idea. What we were doing with the the medical records capabilities, we're just extending the existing capability that a lot of departments already have. Not all departments, obviously, but many departments are already moving to digitized electronic health records and digitized solutions that allow them to push that data and pull that data from the medical facilities. So just having that heads up and available and interactive without having to be using your hands and having it follow you around as you're walking around the scene really can be a game changer for the users.
No, it really is. When I saw that, I was actually blown away. I was actually blown away by the glasses. And like I said, I've been in the industry for about 4 years now, and I've pretty much worn every head-worn device. And the X2 glasses and the platform, I think we're doing really amazing things. I have another question here. And the other thing, before I go to this next question, is I also want to point out that these are game-changing type of tools, and it really is. I'm really great. I'm really honored to be kind of associated with the team here. How are firefighters interacting with the glasses? Voice, gesture, eye tracking? What is the, out of those, what are they finding, or what are we finding that they're gravitating more towards? Is it the voice? Is it the gesture control? Is it the eye tracking? What's the most beneficial of the three?
Sure. So I guess the best way to answer that would be first to kind of describe very quickly the ways that we have to interact with the device. Currently, we offer voice commands, head motion control, and gesture control are the three modalities that we provide. Now, we're still very early in the process of departments utilizing the glasses. So I don't have any hard numbers for you on that. But what I've seen is users, typically there's a divide in users between those who like to use voice commands and those who don't like to use voice commands. We all know people in our lives that they just can't use an Amazon Echo or a Google Home. It just doesn't work for them, or they don't want to use it. So
right.
we need to provide flexibility. So we've tried to provide a number of ways to interact with the device, and each of those are fairly configurable to where most users can find a way to interact pretty consistently. I have maybe a little bit of a preference for voice, given my background, and that's what I use when I'm using the device, and and helps that I help to design the voice interface and the SDK. But I do think it's very useful. It allows you to do hands-free, and it allows you to do a lot of things very quickly. Now, for on the scene, we are looking at some additional solutions for things like high noise environment. So external microphones are one thing that we're working on with some partners, some different options with also with hearing protection for various use cases as well, being able to use those in those environments, which is really related to my background from the Army and DoD. Exactly what we worked on was voice interface inside of things like tanks that we were able to do. So these are the kind of things that you can look forward to moving forward as far as that goes.
For those of you who just joining, we've had a few new users. Our original webinar was cut short because our panel was under a tornado attack, And Dan Yeager from our technical team was nice enough to be listening and actually come on. So what we are doing is we're having a conversation related to firefighters and first responders, but more so about AR and kind of how it benefits. And we were just talking about voice. If you have any questions, guys, by all means, please, we're going to get to them. Post them in the chat room. We're going to answer them. And then if anything that we cannot get to, we will respond, and we're going to reschedule the original webinar. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You know, when we talk about voice, I remember a situation that I was doing. I was working with a company, and when I was finding out what they really like most about this device, and one of the things they said was that the flashlight, right? That I didn't have to hold the flashlight in my mouth. And I didn't think about that. I kind of laughed and I said, what do you mean you didn't have to hold the flashlight in your mouth? And basically what they said was, he goes, when I'm on a job or I need to hold the flashlight, I also need my hand. So I either hold the flashlight in my mouth or I kind of hold it like this and try to work. And he, you know, basically all I had to do was say flashlight on, and like magic, the flashlight came on. And voice is something that's very natural. We interact. It's easier. It's easier than text. And I think that as voice technology, if you remember, Siri and even Alexa, even a year ago, was not as advanced as it is today. I would say that being able to talk would probably be more important than be able to look around in the gesture control. So I'm with you on voice. I'm a big fan of it, and I can see how it definitely works with the first response for our first response team. This is a question we get asked, and I'm glad somebody in the chat room did ask it, because you know there's a lot of different devices. We're a binocular display. For those of you who don't know that, there's two lenses versus a monocular display. And one of the questions we get asked is, you know, how do we compare with HoloLens? And I think that, you know, HoloLens has the market. And I think that when I wore in the HoloLens, but when I saw ThirdEye, I was really blown away. Can you kind of talk about some of the differences between HoloLens and ThirdEye?
Sure thing. So as you mentioned, you know, there really only are two players in the market right now. If you want a binocular mixed reality headset that doesn't require a cable coming down from your head to some sort of pack or to your phone, and that's us in the HoloLens 2. For starters, we're about half of the weight of a HoloLens 2. So we're just under 10 ounces. The HoloLens, I believe, is closer to 20. We offer a completely open platform. So one of the things with our platform, we are Android, and it's straight Android. It's not Android with some sort of layer on top that you need to learn. So basically, if you have an Android app, you can probably just run it on the device and it will run. Obviously, you'll need to make some changes to your UI to make it super user-friendly for the heads-up experience. But the idea is that if you have an Android app, you're 90% of the way there already. Whereas if you're developing for HoloLens, you have to basically start over. So that's really one of the ways that we can get a lot of this existing capability that was designed for a 2D screen into a format where it's heads up and it's available very quickly. Obviously, one of the other differences between us and HoloLens is price. We're priced very competitively, I think over $1,000 less per unit. So as that scales to volume, it's a lot of money when you're talking about hundreds or thousands of devices being deployed.
I want to go back to, in terms of, I have another question. I want to go back in terms of the first responders, and somebody's asking about Hipaa compliance. So we are a Hipaa compliant platform, the glasses. The question is there any compliance requirements to work with firefighters, FDA or FCC or Hipaa? Can you kind of touch base on how important was that for us to be Hipaa compliant to work with Marcus Hook and other ones moving forward?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, to work with the departments, we did need to go through the process and become Hipaa compliant. I believe it's Hipaa compliant level 3. And what that requires is basically we go through a whole process, and this will kind of address one of the security questions that were there. So we go through a process of verifying our security and our encryption process and all of those things, access controls, basically from on the device back to our servers that host our remote assistance and workspace platforms. We work with our partners at Amazon Web Services that are hosting the servers to make sure that everything is compliant. And we have all of that paperwork that we've set out. Everything is fully encrypted, plus additional layers of security on the device that you can use as an option from the user perspective. We also provide multi-device management, so an MDM platform that allows you to secure devices and restrict access to various data on the device. As far as the electronic health data and patient health information, right now the plan for us is to have that still be hosted on the current platforms, and then we're viewing it on the device. So you wouldn't be necessarily storing that information permanently at rest on the device. So that's one of the ways that we want to try to keep the security situation in check. You want to have that patient health information in as few places as possible on a permanent basis.
One of the things that I also liked is I want to talk a little bit about thermal imaging. Can we have a little quick conversation about thermal imaging?
Sure.
So in terms of thermal imaging, I know that there's two ways to access it, and this comes into play specifically with COVID, where we have to keep a distance. Somebody has to keep a distance to take the temperature. Can you talk a little bit about our native thermal imaging as it would relate to a first responder, and talk about the FLIR accessory that you could also attach to the ThirdEye, to the X2. I'm sorry.
Sure. So the built-in thermal sensor is really more for doing general types of thermal scanning. It's not an absolute scanner, so it doesn't give you exact temperatures. It gives you variation in temperatures, and it's fairly low resolution. I believe it's 8 by 8. You're able to scale that up by doing resampling. It's something that we've worked on a little bit in the past. The real solution, though, is working with a company called FLIR with their external sensor. And we're able to, as you said, we're able to snap that up on top of the front of the glasses, connect it via USB. And then our app that we've developed for the glasses allows you to use the sensor and view the images directly from the sensor. We also able to identify individual faces and then provide basically what is the highest temperature on that face, and then we visualize that on the screen. Also allow you to have an alarm set for a minimum temperature level so that you can be alerted if a face comes through the screen that has a temperature over a certain level. So something like if you wanted to set it at 100 or 101, you could do that. It is fairly robust. Now, these thermal sensors are not designed to do exact temperature measurements. There is a little bit of variation, but the use case for this type of sensor, and it's been deployed all over the country, all over the world, similar sensors. You can use these to pre-screen people, and that's the most important thing about this. So I can have the glasses on, I can be at a distance, and I can tell if somebody is enough of a threat from a temperature perspective that they need to be at, fully screened with with a distance thermometer. But it helps you to be able to move through larger groups of people, at a distance without having to test each individual person.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I think one of the biggest fallacies with the thermal imaging is that you see a lot of people now, everybody's being scanned to see if they have COVID, but the reality is that you're not going to show a symptom if you're in the, if you're not actually have COVID. So you could actually have it past the scan. And I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, because there's a lot of companies that are, hey, the thermal scanners detect COVID. They only really detect it if you actually have it. And that's important. But again, the very fact that we've incorporated that into our glasses speaks to what we are doing. Just even a simple, but we also allowed you to expand on this. So you guys are really doing great work. Next question: what are some ways that the X2 glasses can see? We kind of spoke to this with regarding sensitive data. I won't get back into that. What is the best working environment for ThirdEye headsets like, I don't know what HoloLens 2, still optimized for interior environments? Is that the same case for ThirdEye? So I think what they're saying is HoloLens is optimized more for an interior environment. How does ours work in an exterior environment and an interior environment?
Sure. So with waveguide type displays, which is the same basic technology that Magic Leap and HoloLens 2 also use, we use a waveguide see-through display. Obviously, the lower light environments are better for those. We can be used outdoors. Now, in direct sunlight, things like that, it is going to be hard to see. But in general, we have had some success using it outdoors. Some feedback that we've had from users previously were that it looks better outdoors than either Magic Leap or HoloLens. And that's basically, I guess, the answer to that question for now. Is it's not fully optimized based on the see-through technology, but it can be usable, and it can actually be optimized based on how you design your graphic interface as well. So different colors, different types of contrast will help you see things better outdoors than indoors.
One of the things that I was impressed with was how the screen that I did see on the outdoors. I was very impressed with that. So, I mean, it is something that you should try. You should get to look at it. I think that a lot of people, especially when it's sunlight readable, it makes a big difference. Can you speak to the ruggedness factor? This question comes in specifically in a crisis situation or an environment that a first responder may find themselves in. Talk about our rugged factor and kind of how it's built to last.
Sure. In this case, we are ANSI certified in a number of different certifications for industrial. We are not fully ruggedized at this point. Being as we're the early adopter portion of deployment, one of the things that we're looking at is how we become specifically rugged for these different environments and use cases for first responders. So obviously right now you wouldn't take this thing into a fire situation. It's made of plastic. So as we move forward on these new versions, again, this is another way as a small company where we can be responsive and iterate on the existing design to see if we can come up with specific solutions for various use cases and customers.
Yeah, it really is. But again, when the fire department, they would tell you they were very happy to have it, and the things that they can't do with it are minimal compared to what they're going to be doing with it. And that kind of brought up another question, and it was in terms of when they're starting to implement this technology. It comes to like guidance and job training and standard operating procedures, right? I think that this brings on a lot of questions about how do we incorporate this? How do we make sure that we're utilizing this technology properly, right? When phones first came out, there were still some companies even a few years ago that you couldn't even bring your phone into it. So is there any advice that you can give somebody considering our technology or even another technology for that matter, to consider about putting protocols in place? And can you talk a little bit about, can you talk to that as it relates to ThirdEye?
Sure, absolutely. And it's something that, like you said, across the board for any technology, when you're bringing it into a situation where lives are at stake, properties at stake, all these kinds of things. I recommend going through some preparation, going through your existing processes, analyzing how you're currently using technology and how that impacts your standard operating procedures and how it impacts your effectiveness. And really, instead of just saying, here's a new piece of gear, let's bring it in and just play around with it, think about where it can be used to enhance your effectiveness. Where are the gaps that aren't being served, where this platform and this type of wearable could allow you to do things that you're not able to currently do. And I think that's a very important thing to do before you start using the technology. And obviously, once you get your hands on it, it starts to spark ideas and you get feedback, and that's how we move. And that's really how we are looking to work directly with the departments to develop these specific capabilities that are going to have a high impact that can be done, especially near term. And then we also need to focus on some of those midterm and long terms, things like ruggedization, integration with the RMS and EMS information platforms, and all the other things that go along with that, and how we go down the line to bring in the more advanced capabilities. But the idea is to figure out where those gaps are in the first place. Yeah,
that really is important. I think the other thing too that I notice is when people need to have a use case, right? And I think they go into this, let's just bring this device in, but they don't have a use case, and they try to get the device to match the use case. You really need to have a use case to get the device and have that conversation. 5G, everybody's talking about 5G, specifically as it relates to being a game changer for AR and MR. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how 5G is going to really help first responders and anybody for that matter in terms of AR and MR solutions?
Sure, in general. So we're working with a handful of partners in the 5G area, you know, folks like Verizon and their partners as well specifically. But the idea is for us, we're still under consideration as to whether we want to integrate 5G modems directly into the device, or if we want to maintain working with, you know, some sort of, you know, 5G hotspot type of thing that, you know, can be, you know, worn or held in a pocket or, you know, placed on the vehicle. So that's still yet to be determined for us, but we do see 5G, especially edge computing, as being the way to go for, you know, a lot of this advanced mixed reality and augmented reality type of capability. We can do a lot on the glasses themselves, but it's still only basically a smartphone on your head. And there are limitations to where we can go with that. Once you offload a lot of that process to the cloud, even if it's an edge cloud on a local 5G server, once we have the latency down, being that close to the computer and into the server, we're able to do a lot more with direct computation of the environment and objects in the environment. So that's some things you can look forward to as we move towards that. And we start to move our SLAM type capabilities to the cloud and basically push that as kind of the main way to go. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of this market move to in the next couple of years.
I guess I have one last question. And my dog is seeing the mailman in the window right now. So if you guys hear barking, I'm not beating him. I want to have one last question, and then our kind of time is up. Can you talk about some of the user interface design considerations? What was some of the key criteria our team considered, for example, in a firefighter scenario? So if you could talk a little bit about our interface, but more importantly, are we going to be having very fire-specific or first responder interfaces on the X2?
Sure. So again, we're fairly early in the design process on a lot of these things for first responders. So it's going to be based specifically on feedback and on our research working with the departments. But one thing that I can tell you for sure is that, you know, visibility and minimizing the amount of information on screen while providing the right information at the right time is really the important thing. It's very similar to use cases for the military. It's the same idea. There's a lot of information flying around and a lot of things that you may need, but in certain situations, you don't want to be overloaded by information on the screen to the point where I can't see what's in front of me because I have all of this information just kind of floating in front of me. So the idea that we've followed, especially right away for this EMS protocol application that we're working on, is minimizing the UI so it's not distracting, making sure it's contrasted with the background as much as possible, so bright colors with a see-through background, making sure text is readable when it's there, and making sure the buttons and things like that are clickable if you decide to use that way of interacting, and providing a voice interface that's intuitive. So really providing say what I see essentially on the screen. So if you want to click a button, you should be able to say whatever the button says instead of having to memorize a list of voice commands, things like that. So the idea is to provide information without increasing the cognitive burden of the user while they're using the system. You want it to help them do their job and enhance their ability to do their job. You don't want it to overload them.
You know, one of the things I do want to go back to is earlier you mentioned that, we're ThirdEye is a small team and custom software. And one of the things that we were discussing on our dry run yesterday with the team is how we're helping them build customized solutions. And so I was hoping that maybe, not getting into great detail, but kind of when we initially go in and we're looking for a solution, specifically with an organization like Marcus Hook, I'm sure they had some very specific things that they needed or, really wanted, their Christmas list. How are we able to work with them to really get, from, hey, this is what I want, wouldn't this be cool, to, oh my God, it works, from concept to, can you talk a little bit about how we do our custom development? Because this is key, and I think this is one of the key differentiators between us and any other company on the market that sells wearable devices. They are only focused on the hardware. They're not focused on the software.
Sure, absolutely. So being a small and responsive company, what we're able to do is we work directly with the customers. You'll have, once there's basically an agreement in place that, hey, we're gonna work with this device, we're interested, here's what we want to do. We bring the technical team right away to start developing the requirements. And what we did with Upper Merion was we came in, we had a meeting, well, a virtual meeting due to situation, but we had a virtual meeting and sat down, went through a questionnaire basically that we've put together to help us extract the real requirements and really the needs and wants of the departments. And once we have that basic list, we start to look at what's a near term, what's a midterm, what's a long term, and what are the steps that get us there. And what we like to try to do is grab one of those near term items and see if we can put together even just a proof of concept that they can play around with in a very quick turnaround. So example, right now we're finishing up this initial demo for the EMS protocol app. We had our initial discussion about 3 weeks ago. We're at our point right now, we're running some testing and quality assurance, and we'll be demoing that to them hopefully the end of this week and allowing them to use it, to kick the tires, give us feedback, and then allow us to continue doing that. But that consisted of, I think, roughly 2 meetings. An initial meeting, as we talked about, we took the information after identifying the protocol as kind of a near-term item. They provided the information to us that we needed. We did some research, we learned about it, we asked some questions, came up with a basic design. We showed it to the folks over there. They were very excited about the design and the functionality and our approach to it. So once we had that, we went into the development process, and we're turning around a very quick proof of concept type of demo that hopefully we can now get some more more feedback on. And if it works out, that's something that we'll productize and we'll really expand to the full capabilities of all the protocols out there. I believe we're doing about 4 protocols right now. I believe there's something like 250 protocols that they have for Pennsylvania EMS. So that's the idea. We can make sure that we're doing the right work before we really jump in and do this entire larger product for them. But that's the idea, essentially, is this iterative process based on short sprints.
Dan, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for literally at a moment's notice, dude, I need you, right? And again, this speaks to kind of like, literally, we were even joking around about it yesterday. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I appreciate that. One last question is, in a perfect world, how do you want to see the X2 platform evolve specifically for first responders?
I think long term, what we would like to see is really to have something that meets the needs of each specific use case, right? Something specifically for fire that integrates with your air mask and your protective gear that can handle the high temperatures. I think that's really a really kind of far down the road type of wish list type of thing to ruggedize it like that. But I think that's where this needs to go to really get your full capability out of it. But I think realistically, I think where we are is going to be augmenting the existing equipment that's there. So I don't see us replacing the tablets and the phones, but I see us being there for specific use cases that provide that extra amount of capability that really makes a difference. And I think that's something that we're going to see quite soon.
Yeah, I think the hands-free and the way, COVID had a funny way of kind of bringing telemedicine to the forefront. I mean, before it was one of those little, yeah, we do telemedicine, but it was not the main, and you've seen companies shift specifically for the telemedicine. Folks, guys, thank you so much for being patient. We did absolutely not foresee a tornado. For all the participants that joined us, I hope you got something out of this. Dan, thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for being patient. We will talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks, everybody.
You got it. Bye-bye.